I'm Dylan.
And I'm Kiyan.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we cure the common cold.
We are doctors, right? It's called Trust Your Doctor.
We're renegade podcast lords, remember?
But
we put that on the website.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, this week we watched The Ark, a far superior serial to what we watched last week. Finally, a good serial in season 3 that isn't insanely long.
Yep. Favorite serial of season 3 so far.
Really? More than Dalek's Master Plan?
Maybe.
Really? I wouldn't say I liked it as much as Dalek's Master Plan.
Yeah, this one actually was a bit slower than Dalek's Master Plan, which makes it less likable than Dalek's Master Plan.
Well, I definitely like the serial. My only
I'm going to say they're about on
the
the same level-ish.
I don't know. This felt a little disjointed, as we'll get into later.
Yeah, it did.
But anyway, following the abomination of a serial we watched last week, the
TARDIS crew, the Doctor, Stephen, and new companion Dodo.
They materialize in a jungle.
And Dodo still doesn't believe that the TARDIS is a time machine. Or a spaceship. She believes they're just in the jungle outside of London. Brilliant start.
So they're walking around this jungle, and Stephen's trying to convince Dodo that they're actually traveling through space and time, and they run into a bunch of animals that don't really belong together.
Yeah, an elephant, a chameleon, lizard.
Yeah, like a monitor lizard, I believe it was, and then some bugs from different continents. So Dodo's like, well, we're probably in a zoo or something. And the Doctor also doesn't know where they are, but the Doctor thinks they're probably on Earth.
Right.
And then you see this group of humans with these alien-looking creatures,
Right.
and they're having some sort of trial.
Yeah.
And this guy is on trial for some sort of crime. I think he messed up a valve or whatever it was.
He left it on or something.
So they sentence him,
Mhm.
not to death, but to shrinkage. Yeah.
For 300 years.
Yeah.
So they do that.
So they shrink him. And we're like, whoa, he's shrunken. Shrunken? Shrunk? Whatever. But then you see the Doctor and crew again, and they're walking around doing their thing.
And the Doctor's like, hey, look, there's no sky.
Right, there's actually a ceiling. Hence the name of this episode, The Steel Sky, or whatever it was.
Yep.
And then the Doctor and friends notice a mechanical humming in the ground. And they're like, whoa, where are we?
And then we cut back to the humans and their alien buddies. And the guy's like, hey, Commander, there's intruders on the ship. And he's like, what?
That can't be possible. We've accounted for everyone. So, back in the jungle, the alien-like creatures confront the Doctor and Stephen and Dodo. And, yeah.
So they bring him back to the... Well, so the commander's like, hey, invite them in, but the like subordinate guy wants to just capture them.
Right.
So the fact that Dodo's catching the cold becomes a major problem.
Right, during this
for
whole
everyone
thing so
involved.
Far, Dodo has been sneezing and whatnot. And so they get taken back to the main hub of humans and the aliens. And they're told that they're actually on a spaceship that left from Earth who knows how long ago. And that since Earth is dying, they needed to find another planet, which they did, so they're going there.
Right.
And it's called Refusis 2.
Mm-hmm.
And they reveal that they're going to get there in 700 years' time. And so they say the leader, or whoever he is, tells the Doctor that, and I thought this was pretty interesting, that both the Trojan War and the Dalek invasion of Earth were in the first segment of time, and that they're now in the 51st segment of time.
57th.
57th.
Yep.
So that entire 3,000-year time span was only the first segment of time.
Yep.
So the Doctor's like, we must be 10 million years in the future. They are. And elephants are still around, so I guess we don't have to worry about them going. No.
There's actually a timing discontinuity with this in an episode from the reboot, which I'm going to talk about at the end.
Okay.
So.
So
what happens is they're like, hey, look at the statue we're building. Which at first you're like, wow, this is a completely useless scene. But it becomes way more important at the end of the series.
Right. They're building a statue to commemorate the human race. And it's going to take 700 years to build. Right. Because they're using ancient methods to build it. And coincidentally, they're going to arrive on Refusus 2 in 700 years. So
it's like they planned it out or something like that.
Or it was just a happy coincidence.
No. They probably planned it out. So the commander gets a fever. So the subordinate's like, look, they've brought a plague upon us. Lock them up. So they do. And then some monoids die of the fever.
Yeah, and some humans and monoids die, right? We didn't mention the aliens are called monoids, and they have one eye.
Wow, that's a really original name now that I think about it.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that till now.
Oh.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
And they have shaggy hair or whatever. And to me, when I first saw them, it looked like their eye was embedded within their mouth, which I thought looked really gross.
I didn't see that. I just saw all the monoids look like they had a lazy eye, and the eye was completely independent of where the monoid was looking.
Yeah, that too. And their costumes, I don't know if those are supposed to be clothes or skin or what, but they just didn't look that good. I can forgive it though, because the cereal was pretty good. And I didn't really follow any of their names at all.
Xentos was the commander. Right? No,
Xentos was
the subordinate guy.
Yeah. So anyway, the Doctor and Steven and Dodo are locked up in a cell, and Dodo's like, yeah, sorry, I just have a cold. It shouldn't be a problem though, right? Because it's just a cold, right? And the Doctor's like, no, these guys don't have an immunity to it. They might die.
And Steven's like, oh no. And Xentos overhears them, and he's like, hear that, guys? Just lock them up. So now they're going to be put on... Well, so they eject a monoid up into space. And I got a very Star Trek II Wrath of Khan feel from this at the very end. But explaining why would involve spoiling the plot of Star Trek II, so I'm not going to. But so they eject the dude out into space. And then they put the Doctor on trial. Well, not the Doctor on trial. They put the Doctor, Steven, and Dodo on trial.
We also forgot to mention that the monoids are assisting the humans because their planet also died, and they came to Earth, and now they're just acting as servants towards the humans. Which you don't think is important, but it becomes important later.
Yeah.
So, anyway, what you were saying, they're now on trial.
Right. So, they're only going to allow one of the people to talk at the trial, either Steven, the Doctor, or Dodo. So Steven's like, I gotta go, Doctor. This room is too small.
Right.
So he's out there, in the prosecution chamber.
Right, in the defendant's cage. I guess that's a thing.
Completely useless defendant lawyer. Does nothing to help Steven, to be honest.
And so the civilization, or the Guardians, as they call themselves, the humans call themselves the Guardians, they kind of argue and internally dispute over what should be done. Right. Because Xentos thinks that the Doctor is actually Refusian, who's come to their ship to stop them from landing on Refusus in 700 years' time. Mm-hmm. And most of the other people on the ship also think that. But the leader and his granddaughter, I guess, don't believe that, and they believe what the Doctor and Steven and Dodo say, because they would have no reason to lie about stuff, and I don't know. We also forgot to mention that they shrunk down most of the population and put them in little petri dishes. And that's why that guy was shrunk in the beginning. That's how they're transporting the entire population of the Earth in one spaceship.
So they sentence the Dr. Stephen and Dodo to be ejected out into space. And then the commander's daughter gets the commander to tell Xantos to allow the doctor to experiment with a cure
on Stephen. Because Stephen's also sick.
So Stephen he's like, fine. I mean, if we make a bad decision, we won't live long enough to see it. So the doctor finds a cure, cures Stephen, cures everyone. They get in the TARDIS, and the serial's done.
Or so you think.
Because then the TARDIS rematerializes in the same place.
Yep.
And then the episode ends.
And, well,
right. That's just episode 2.
So you think the serial's over. But then some... Okay, so what I didn't get was... Right, let's just start one thought and not finish it. Anyway.
That's okay. So, hypothetically, at the end of the thought, anyway.
Isn't the TARDIS not supposed to be able to materialize in the same place? I mean, I guess it just materialized in another area of the same jungle.
Well, it wasn't the same place because it was at a different time.
Okay,
so
yeah.
So it wasn't the same place.
Oh, all right, that makes sense.
Hypothetically.
Okay.
I mean, you don't know it's the same time until the Dr. Stephen and Dodo...
it's not the same time.
Yeah. Okay, so in episode 3, they leave the TARDIS and they're like, whoa, why are we back, Doctor?
And they're in the same ship, clearly. You can tell it's the same place, but everything's different.
Yeah, they see the statue, and it's completed now.
But it's not a human. It's a
monoid.
Dun, dun, dun. And Dodo's like, what? We were only gone for 1 second. What happened? And then Steven's like, no, that's not how time travel works.
You know, you think she would have figured that out when they arrived on a spaceship 10 million years in the future?
So upon further inspection of the ship, it turns out the monoids rebelled and have enslaved the humans.
And they have voice boxes now?
Right, the humans helped them develop heat guns and voice boxes, so now the monoids can speak and shoot things. And now they've rebelled.
Yep.
So they're treating the humans as slaves, and
they capture the Dr. Stephen and Dodo and imprison them.
Right, they in the kitchen, right, at that point?
Yep.
Right, so a lot of the humans that they've enslaved are working in the kitchen, making their food. And I believe some of them, or maybe it was just that one guy who was working personally for the monoids. Right. You know, as a personal servant or whatever. So what happens then?
So the people in the kitchen have heard legends of this doctor guy.
Right, from 700 years ago. Because...
Could it be? That's just a legend. Then the monoids bring him in like, all right, doctor, go over there. And they're like, whoa.
Yeah, the doctor is now a legend on the spaceship. So they're about to land on Refusis, and the humans tell the doctor and everyone what's happened, and they decide that it would be a good idea to try and overpower one of the monoids when it comes in and checks on them.
It's a really bad idea.
Yeah, they try and fail, and the monoid kills some people, and yeah, they're like, wow. So in order to sort of test the waters on Refusis, because they still don't know what kind of life exists on Refusis. So one, the monoid in charge, because they don't have names, they all have numbers. So one is like, well, we should just send the doctor and his friends ahead, because if they die, it won't matter. So they do that. They send the doctor and Dodo and one human and one monoid down to Refusis. Two, actually. They send Monoid 2 or whatever. So they're sort of scouting out Refusis, and it looks like, I don't know, sort of plain mountainous area.
Yep.
And there's no one in sight, but then the doctor notices a sort of castle off in the distance, and the monoid is like, well, we better go show those Refusians who's boss. And I'm like, wow, that's a great way to make friends.
The monoids weren't there to make friends.
It's true.
They were there to come and conquer stuff.
So at the castle house structure thing, the monoid wants the Refusians to show themselves. So he starts breaking their stuff, and then you hear a voice, and it's a Refusian, and he tells the
They're
monoid
invisible.
to stop. Right.
They're invisible. Again, like the Vizians.
Were they just too low budgeted at this point to create another alien? Maybe.
There was only one. What's his name?
Refusian. Oh, right. We forgot to mention, again, we're forgetting to mention a lot of things, that confrontation between Dodo and the monoid, where Dodo is like, you were planning to just kill all the humans and not let them live on Refusis, weren't you? And he's like, no. Why would you ever think that? Because he gives himself away. He lets his words slip out.
And that's the start of where everything goes wrong for the monoids.
Yeah, basically. So back on the ship, well, no, back in the mansion thingy, the Refusian reveals that due to some sort of solar flare, the Refusians no longer have physical bodies.
Pseudoscience.
But it works because that's why they're okay with another species inhabiting their planet, because they want some form of noticeable life. So they're like, well, we'll just welcome these people who are
that's why they built
invading.
the castle. And more like it, apparently.
Yeah.
So the monoids are like, nope, we're going to kill you all. Yep.
So they try and go back, the monoid and the human that he brought along, try and get back to the
Yendom.
shuttle. No, that wasn't Yendom.
Yeah, it is Yendom.
No, because Yendom does. Oh, yeah, it is. No, it is Yendom.
Nope.
It is
I'm
Yendom.
looking at the wiki.
Right, no, I'm thinking of Maharis. Maharis dies later. Spoiler alert.
They don't even know who Maharis is.
He's the servant guy. Yeah,
well, now
spoiler,
you
he
told them
dies.
now it's a spoiler.
Oh, well.
Okay.
If you don't want spoilers for serials, you shouldn't be listening to this podcast.
Good point. So
Anyway.
Yendom.
He, like Dodo, confronts two about how they're just going to kill all the humans.
Except because it's vital to the plot, 2 kills Yendom.
And he's like, that'll show him.
And then he gets into the launcher, contacts the Ark. He's like, oh yeah, it's pretty good down here, except... And then the launcher blows up.
Right, the Refusian uses his ability to blow stuff up, which he apparently has, to blow the launcher up, and he kills 2. And then he's like,
wait.
we only accept peaceful existences here.
Well, he's like, we only accept peaceful people here, but we can go to war if we need to.
Right.
Because was that at the end of episode 3, the beginning of episode 4, where he tells the doctor he has like a day for them to be peaceful, otherwise they're going to start preparing for war or something.
But anyway, now 1 and 3 are like, what happened to 2? What 2? So...
Shout out to 77, the best monoid.
77 dies!
No! Stop spoiling it before we get there. You're ruining the summary.
This summary has already fallen to pieces.
Okay, so 1 and 3 are like, let's just go down there because it seemed like 2 was pretty favorable to the conditions on the planet.
But meanwhile, 4 is planning on usurping power from 1. Because he doesn't think 1 is a good leader. So,
He's got 6 with him.
So the Refusians decide to just take their entire central command down to... Or the monoids, I mean. Decide to take
Not just the whole central command, every monoid goes down. Even the ones in the petri dishes.
No, not the ones in
No,
the
because they had the Guardians load them into the ships.
Oh, right. That's what they were doing.
They took every monoid.
No, because they unshrink some of the monoids at the end.
Well, they had to have taken all of them because the bomb was going to blow up the ship, remember? They wouldn't leave the monoids behind. They took them all in the lander.
I guess that makes sense. So they get down there, and then 4 is like, well, we should go back before the bomb goes off in order to do some other stuff and just strand some stuff.
Luckily, the Doctor and Dodo are listening, so they quickly get inside the spaceship. They tell Steven there's a bomb, but Steven already knows because we skipped the entire scene where the subordinate
Yeah,
Dude.
Harris overhears some monoids talking about how the bomb is going to go off.
Yep.
And he feels really betrayed because he's been working for the monoids.
And yet he still follows them down to...
He still follows them to his death. Anyway.
So Steven's like, nope, we already know. There's a bomb, we just can't find it. So the doctor's like, don't worry, I'll find it. I'll go talk to the monoids. He steps out of the spaceship, some monoids there, and he's like, hi guys. Let's talk.
And then he tells the Refusian to
take the shuttles.
And one is like, what? Why is the shuttle taking off?
No, that wasn't one. That was 6. No, that was 65.
Whatever.
65 watched the shuttle just take off and was like, yep.
So the doctor says he hasn't met anyone down there at all, and the Refusian makes its way back to the Ark.
Right. So now the Refusian's on the Ark, and the doctor's down below, and the monoids are talking, and they're like, well, guess we're stuck here. Good thing there's that bomb. And then 4 is like, you know what? You've made too many bad decisions. Anybody who wants to stay here with 1 can, but I'm leaving for the Ark again.
Right, and they reveal the location of the bomb. The doctor and Dodo overhear it.
And so they leave, and then 1 is like, no, we can't let them leave. Let's go, boys.
So
and
they
he leaves
go
1 guard to watch the doctor and Dodo, and then they all go out, and
then there's a giant killing spree.
6
Literally,
dies first.
Every monoid except 4 dies.
Yeah.
So the ones we counted specifically that were shown on screen were 6, 77, and then there was another one that we couldn't see.
It was probably 65, but we don't know.
Right. And 1. 4 kills 1 very dramatically. And then meanwhile, Steven and the rest of the humans are looking for the bomb on the ship, and they can't find it because they don't know it's actually in the statue. So they send some sort of search party down to Refusis, and one of the members of this party finds the doctor and Dodo, and he tells the guard that 1 needs his help. So the guard's like, okay, I'll just go leave these people unattended then.
Yep.
So they make their way...
This series is built on incompetent guards.
Yeah, it really is. So they alert Steven that the bomb is in the statue, and the Refusian helps... They can't lift the statue, so the Refusian helps move it using its psychic powers. And
then he throws it out the spaceship, and it blows up, and everyone's okay. And then all the humans go down, and the Refusian's like, I can only let you live here if you live in peace with the monoids. And they're like, all right.
And that's how it ends. So the monoids and the humans are now at peace again, and they have their own planet. Yay. And then the doctor and Steven Vicky.
Vicky. I almost said the same thing.
Dodo. What kind of name is Dodo? I mean, I know her name is Dorothy, but Dodo...
I think she's here forever. I think she's here for a while.
I don't know.
Joy.
I don't know, actually. I've stopped spoiling things for myself. But anyway,
Dodo.
They get back into the TARDIS, and they take off, but then the doctor sort of dematerializes. And they're like, what?
Ship.
Yeah, within the ship. And they're like, what? What's going on? The doctor's like, it must be an outside attack. And then it ends.
Edge of destruction level.
But we forgot the scene where the doctor and Dodo walk past 4, and 4 is just looking at a sea of dead monoids, and he just throws down his gun, and he's like, what have I done?
Well, he didn't say that, but it was all over his one-eyed, no-mouth face.
It's pretty dark, actually. But yeah, geez. I really liked this serial. My only qualm with it is that it felt a little disjointed. You know, the first 2 episodes, I mean, by the end, you were like, okay, I can see how each thing led to the next. But during the first 2 episodes, it was sort of about one thing, and the second 2 were about another.
Right.
Which was I was okay with, to be honest, because, I mean, how much can you do with the whole, we're infecting people of a different time plot?
Well, I mean, I thought it was pretty cool, because I don't remember a serial we've watched so far where the Doctor actually came to the same place at a different point in time. Like, there hasn't been a serial yet where he revisited a place.
Except when they keep showing up in London for some reason.
Well, that's true, but that wasn't.
But yeah, no, I
vital to the plot.
see what you mean. Yeah, I did kind of like how it all worked out in the end. And I like, this was only briefly mentioned and it wasn't that major, but like the monoids were talking about how an offshoot of the sickness sort of led to the monoid revolt because the humans were weakened.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to see how what happened 700 years in the past affected.
You know, if they've cured the common cold, you'd think they'd hang on to the cure for a while just in case it showed up again.
They are 10 million years in the future, so I don't know. And another thing, though, that I wanted to mention was, I don't know, I just thought it was kind of ridiculous that they're 10 million years in the future. And like...
So, the timing discontinuity I was going to talk about, which is less of a discontinuity and more of something that was interesting because it tied in with this episode. The Doctor actually sees the Earth get destroyed in the reboot. There's an entire episode set on a space station, and that's 5 billion years in the future.
Well, they didn't say the Earth was destroyed. They just said it was dying, so I'm assuming it was just so polluted. And...
Well, no, because in the episode of the reboot, the reason why the Earth still exists 5 billion years in the future is because some, like, corporation is using shields to contain the explosion of the sun, and they've kind of, like, don't have the money for it anymore. So that's why, like, a whole bunch of delegates came to watch the Earth die. And that's 5 billion years in the future. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. No, well, there's bound to be sort of not necessarily full-on discontinuity, but
well, I mean,
there's bound to be...
This one can just be explained away by the fact that they probably just preserved the sun in the shields for,
I guess,
4.9 billion years.
Yeah, and you know, I've gotta say that, and I know I kind of touched upon this before, that although it's really hard to you know, just in the way the show's laid out, where most of the serials or most of the storylines are only 4 episodes and then it goes into something completely different.
Right.
It's pretty hard to create a fully fleshed out sci-fi, you know, world or experience within just maybe 4 episodes. But, you know, just seeing this serial, I realize how good of a job they usually do on it. Because, like, this serial had a pretty important backstory, a lot going on in it with different species, and, you know, the humans were there too. And I just thought they did a really good job in such a short amount of time with, you know, with what they were going for. So that's kind of why I like the sci-fi serials more than the historical serials, just because they usually do such a good job with the worlds. I
mean, the shows like predominantly should be sci-fi because it's a time-traveling alien from another planet.
Right, but
which is why, I mean, the historical serials just don't really fit, to be honest, just because of the way they were doing them in the original series. Like, they can do things historically well. Like, they did it with, the one in Rome, and the Marco Polo one.
Yeah, the Romans.
The Romans. Like, they can do it well, where they're just, the historical setting happens to be a backdrop for the adventure. But when they try to do something like the Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, it just completely doesn't fit with the show, which is probably why we hated that serial so much, is because it just didn't fit with the show at all.
Yeah. It was just too much historicalness, not enough doctor and companions-ness, I suppose.
Right. I mean, part of that can probably be chalked up to them taking too many liberties with the fact that they're using a time machine and then using that to try educate people when it should just be a show for entertainment at this point. I mean, they're well into the 3rd season. At this point, they've probably figured out where they want the show to go, at least.
Yeah, and I know they're going to start cutting back on historical serials and focus more on sci-fi.
Right.
Which I'm okay with.
Once they get to the 3rd Doctor, there's no more historical series at all.
And I read something interesting, actually. They introduced Ian and Barbara as science and history teachers, respectively, because the show was supposed to be focused on both science fiction and historical serials. So they
that's interesting.
Yeah. So that's sort of like a little nod to that. But yeah, overall, this was a really good serial. You know, the first, other than Dalek's master plan, which heavily relied on the Daleks as good villains to be good. This was the first serial in season 3 that I thought was actually really good.
Yeah. I mean, what was interesting about this serial is how they kind of... I mean, I felt like I saw the whole monoid revolution coming. Like, they kind of foreshadowed it a little bit, which is why I was confused when they ended the serial in the middle and they dematerialized and then they rematerialized. I was like, what? Because I was sure that, like, the Doctor was going to be there and then the monoids would, like, try and revolt and the Doctor would have to, like, make a decision whether or not to help the monoids or the humans. Because, I mean, the reason I probably felt that way is because there was an episode in the reboot very similar to this one, actually, set in the future where the humans have this subordinate race called the Ood. And in that episode, the Ood revolt, and the Doctor has to make a decision whether or not to side with the humans or the Ood.
Uh-huh.
So, I don't know, it would have posed a moral quandary for the Doctor.
Yeah. But what they did was good, though. I mean...
But how they executed the second 2 episodes was good, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked it. I don't really have that many complaints.
Right, and one thing I wanted to mention, though, was the whole reason Steven wanted to leave in the last serial was because he was tired of the constant deaths he was faced with in his journeys with the Doctor. You know, with Katerina and Sarah and everyone in that serial, and then all the deaths in Paris. And then when he comes back to warn the Doctor about the policeman, obviously, and he keeps traveling with them, obviously, but he doesn't seem really to be bothered anymore. I mean,
yeah.
Even if he had resolved that conflict himself, you'd think that at least touch upon it.
Right. I mean, I was still watching these episodes when you came today to record due to unforeseen events. And I wouldn't have even noticed that Steven's character had changed that much, except when you pointed it out. Like, I hadn't even noticed that Steven just straight up didn't care that all those people were dying, which is completely opposite to what the whole point he was trying to make at the end of St. Bartholomew's Eve.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that strengthens this serial or weakens it, because, I mean, part of Steven's character is that, I mean, the Doctor's against killing, but if someone dies and it wasn't by the Doctor's hand and it was necessary for the Doctor to survive, in the end, he's going to be okay with that. Whereas Steven is the guy who's like, Doctor, why does death follow you everywhere? And then in this serial, he's just okay with it. It's like a weird flip-floppity.
Right, and I guess you can kind of rationalize that as, it was sort of an inner conflict and he resolved it himself, but I feel like they should have at least touched upon it.
Yeah. I mean, they could have even written something in with... Because Dodo, I mean, you can see already that she's supposed to kind of be like a naive character.
Right, she's supposed to be another Susan or Vicky or whatever.
You could have written something into dialogue between her and Steven, where Steven's just like, oh, death seems to follow him everywhere, and at this point I've just come to accept it. Or he could have been like, you know what, Dodo, there's probably, there's going to be people dying. And
Dodo probably would have been like, I don't care.
Well, right, but that would have developed both of their characters.
Yeah.
Because that would have shown that Dodo is kind of happy-go-lucky, and it would have shown that Steven still has that interior conflict.
Right, and, maybe we will see something of that. I don't think it would be too late to have a scene where that takes place.
Right.
I mean, they should have done it earlier, but if that does happen, then yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the sets for this episode, because this was the first time I was actually like, whoa, those sets look really, really good. The sets for this episode were really impressive. Yeah,
they were. The Refusis especially, I thought.
Right. And the Ark set as well, where they, I guess, kind of like a...
The Ark set, to me, was just sort of... I mean, they usually do a good job with this, but it was just sort of the, futuristic city or ship look they'd been going for with the entire series.
No, the reason why it was so impressive was because it was way more detailed than anything they'd done before. Like, if you remember back to any of the Dalek cities, they're just white walls and there's nothing there. Whereas the Ark, there was like screens and buttons and everything.
I guess,
Like
yeah.
on the level of the TARDIS detailed.
Right, and they also did the technique with the playback, right?
Right.
Which I have no idea how they did in the '60s, to be honest.
It doesn't even say on the wiki.
Yeah.
It does mention that it's the first time in Doctor Who history they filmed scenes out of order
Which is
due to set availability.
right, which is interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't have assumed they would have filmed all the seals before this in order.
Yeah, that's really strange, especially if like in something like the Crusade, which just skipped
Yeah.
back and forth.
Right. That's interesting. But yeah, I mean, overall, good serial, good production values, definitely, except for like the costume.
Yeah,
I mean, well, the humans' costumes were pretty good,
Yeah.
actually.
and honestly, I can forgive them for the sort of lackluster monoid costumes
Right.
because everything else was good. But
Do you think we would like this serial as much as we do if it wasn't after the Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve?
probably not.
Right.
We probably just like this a lot because it was after our least favorite serial, both of our least favorite serial, and honestly, one of the first good serials in season 3. I feel like if this had come in season 1 or 2, it would have just been another okay serial in the pile.
Probably.
But I mean, each thing it's memorable for what it is. So
I mean, it's sad that we can already see the downfall of the show in the 3rd season. That's depressing, actually. I mean, but I'm assuming it's going to get like a rejuvenation when the 2nd Doctor comes around.
hopefully,
I mean,
it's
the
something
thing is,
new,
I
at
feel
least.
like the 2nd Doctor is going to come at a good time because you can already notice that the quality of the 1st Doctor serials decreasing, and I'm guessing with the change of the Doctor, they're probably going to get new behind the scenes stuff as well,
Right?
which I know happens in the reboot. It's kind of like a refresher for the show,
Yeah.
which at this point I feel like the show needs.
Yep.
I mean, it's going to be sad to see the 1st Doctor go, but at this point, his quality of episodes is going down, which is sad because I like the 1st Doctor.
Yeah.
Oh well.
We'll of course do a retrospect on the 1st Doctor when he leaves.
Definitely. Email us, thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, art, all that stuff. Check us out on iTunes if you're listening on the website. Rate us on iTunes if you're listening on iTunes. And that's all of that. Next week,
The Celestial Toymaker. But until then, the end.